Let's get started. We have a lot of content today. Welcome to our webinar about digital engagement design. I'm happy that so many people registered for this webinar, and I'm your host from Diconium today. I'm here today with Yukai and Joris from the Octalysis group. And yeah, what can you expect today? Today, we will first have a quick introduction and framing. Why is the topic so important? We'll do the introduction, and we'll hand over to Yukai, who will give you an introduction into the Octalysis framework, talking about best practices, about facts and figures, and the underlying emotions. And then we will have at the end 15 minutes roundabout for a Q&A session. Please ask anytime questions and use the chat. We also, as you saw when you entered the session, we also are recording that session till the Q&A part. So in the Q&A part, you can freely talk and ask questions that will not be recorded, only the part of the introduction part and Yukai's part about the Octalysis group and the Octalysis framework and the best practices. Please ask anytime, and we moderate then the Q&A session and your questions. Coming to the introduction. I follow Yukai quite some time. Might some say I've stalked him also, and then was quite impressed about what Yukai did in his research and what he built up together with Joris in the Octalysis group. And the question is, why is this topic so important? And in this introduction, I will give you an insight why we think this is important for you all participating here today in gaining a lot of knowledge about how to design truly digital engagement. And why is this topic so important? It's not for B2C, not only for B2C, direct to consumer or B2B. I would sum it up in any kind of human to human relation and interaction. For all those interactions, this topic is extremely relevant. And we thought about 3 guiding questions which are framing the webinar for today. The question, why do companies engage with more with customers? We see that as Diconium does a lot of commerce projects with customers, B2C or B2B, supporting companies to improve in that area. We see getting closer to customer is a trend coming from direct to consumer, but it's in every area extremely important. And today we will see then, in the part from Yukai, how companies engage digitally with customers. Yeah, showing you possibilities, how to do that, best practices. And why is that topic getting more and more traction, is getting more important than ever? It's the red ocean. It's the part where innovation is extremely important to be extremely important in the area of competitive industries, to understand customers better. And also when it comes from understanding and engaging, also the technology part is getting more and more mature. And also here, Yukai will give you insights. So those are the 3 questions framing the webinar, and they will be answered at the end throughout the webinar. And when we look from a commerce perspective, we see 6 drivers, which directly, most of them connect to customer engagement. It's the changing customer expectation. The customer's journey is just changing. Also, this omni-channel explosion, companies sometimes even struggle how to manage all the touch points you have with the customers. And also the interactivity is changing, how customers want to be integrated, yeah? And how interactive companies with customers are interacting, and companies with companies, again, human to human relation and interaction, and that in a transparent way. And so you see a lot of drivers, commerce drivers, how purchasing behavior is changing. They are connected to that topic of customer engagement. And interestingly, in the past years, we talked a lot about direct to consumer. We talked with you, existing and maybe future customers, and we see customers like to buy direct from companies, and they 60% said that in a study we recently did. And the customer assume that the quality of prices are higher when I directly interact with the company. On the other side, manufacturers, they want to strengthen customer relation. They want, they see that as a huge benefit. And strengthening customer relation is all about engagement. And the question is, how can we do that? And we did on Monday a quick survey with just not representative, only 200 people participated throughout all age groups in Germany. And what we see is people buy regularly at the same shop, brand, online or offline. They use loyalty programs very frequently per month, but even per week, quite often. And what they assume is, okay, discounts, coupons, cashback are the main drivers. If this is good, Yukai, you will show us some details later. And what we see also, Payback and Deutschlandcard, at least in Germany, are cross-brand, cross-shop, are the major loyalty programs. Yeah? We see others, IKEA Family, H&M, and Douglas, which are very specific brand-related. Yeah? And there are others with 5%, like example, Lidl Plus. And the expectation of customers is they want to have more value. Then they would use loyalty programs even more intense. So how do we engage with customers even closer? We looked also at gaming. Yukai will show you even more about motivations and how is it connected with gaming. And what we see in this study is gaming is quite popular across all age groups. And not only our little study with 200 participants show that, a lot of other studies are saying the same. At least several times per month people are gaming, and even several times per week. And the question is, how can we use those habits and those mechanics from gaming in the world of customer engagement? Having said that, in this introduction, I'm framing the whole topic, how companies are engaging more. What are the topics, how we can engage, and why is it so relevant, even getting more relevant? Yeah? I will hand over to Yukai, giving you a lot of examples. So make yourself ready for a lot of content, which will be extremely interesting and relevant for you. Yukai, please, I hand over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to start sharing my screen. So, everyone, thanks for being here at this webinar. Today, we're going to talk about gamification and engagement design. So there's a lot of exciting things to cover. So I'm going to move relatively quickly, but we will have a Q&A. I want to make sure we reserve more time for the Q&A so we get to answer questions as opposed to continue to just keep drilling down on this very interesting craft of creating engagement design. So my background, very quickly, I started working in this field now known as gamification in 2003. So almost 20 years now. Our work has impacted over 1 billion user experiences with our clients. I regularly do these talks at places like Stanford University, Yale, Oxford, Google, Tesla, IDEO, variety of places. And I've been known as the #1 gamification guru in the world. Out of the top 100, 3 out of 4 years by a few different organizations in Europe. wrote a book called Actionable Gamification. So if you find the talk interesting, you want to learn more, you can go check that out. We sold about 100,000 copies, a little over 100,000 copies worldwide. And a lot of people have found that to be very valuable and important for the work. And here is my colleague and co-founder, Joris Bierda. He's going to be managing the chat if people are doing the chat. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Ja, guten Tag, meine Damen und Herren. Ich kann auch auf Deutsch reden, aber gehe besser auf Englisch weiter, weil Jukka spricht kein Deutsch. Aber wenn Sie in Chat Fragen haben, dann kann ich auch auf Deutsch antworten, wenn Sie mögen. Okay, so my name is Joris Bierda. I'm the one of the founders of the Octalis Group and the CEO, responsible for worldwide implementation of our projects with all our clients from very large to very small. Been in the business for around 20 years, creating engagement internationally, also in Germany, where I worked with, for example, your peacekeeping forces, trying to make really engaging peace processes on the ground in Africa, as well as in Afghanistan. So pretty diverse background. So thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, and yours also led the Volkswagen Porsche Loyalty Program project that we're gonna talk about soon after. So he's gonna talk more about it when we get there. All right, so here's an example list of the clients we work with. Now, there's a big misconception in the world. People think, oh, well, you know, we work with gamification stuff, right? So we must work with a lot of gaming companies. But in fact, that's a misconception. The sweet spot of gamification are things that are very, very important, but potentially boring, unengaging, or intimidating. Things like healthcare, finance, manufacturing. Sometimes there are things that are very, very competitive, like retail or insurance. You just have to differentiate to stand out. And those are the places that we create a lot of value, hotels and all those things. There's a variety of big history of companies and people who work with us previously. I'm not going to read these quotes, but you can see VP at Google, a partner and executive director at IDEO, or a C-level executive at AIG Insurance Company, more traditional. They've all had extremely good experiences working with them using this framework that we're about to share to create value. And this list goes on and on, but we're here just to show the three. All right, so I think there's a lot of misconceptions, like I said, about gamification. But if you really think about how to do gamification well, it actually combines a variety of fields. It combines things like game mechanics, motivational psychology, behavioral economics, technology platforms, neurobiology, UX, UI, user experience, user interface, and business systems. And when some people see that, they can feel like, wow, that's kind of arrogant to say, right? How can one thing, gamification, include so many sophisticated and well-respected fields? But if you think about it, you need all of the above to make a great game, right? To make a great and successful game, you need to obviously understand game mechanics. If there's a trading system, there's economy, you need to understand behavioral economics, you need to have good UX, UI, understand technology, you need to understand neurobiology. When does dopamine fire in the brain? When does oxytocin get created? That's the social appreciation brain. The only thing a successful game does not have is the bottom one, business systems to create an ROI. Most games can just be funded by itself, and if people spend 8 hours playing it, that's great. But gamification exists to provide external business value. So when we do a gamification work, we're basically combining all those things that make a game successful with those business systems that generate a return on that investment. You know, you're generating more sales, people have higher retention, they're referring customers, employees are working more creatively, and people are dropping out from your company less and less. If those goals are not met, then it's actually distraction, and it means it's supposed to be thrown away. And at the core of gamification, we like to call this human-focused design, as opposed to function-focused design. So most systems are function-focused. They assume that people in the system already have motivation to do the desired behavior, and then optimize for efficiency. So it's a little bit like a factory, where you assume people do the work because they pay them, and then you optimize and you maximize production. You know, you maximize on operational efficiency, fluidity, and sometimes safety. Whereas human-focused design remembers that people in the system have feelings, they have motivations, they have insecurities, they have reasons why they want to do something or why they don't want to do something, and optimize for that. So that's a bit more like a theme park, where you design it to be very, very enjoyable. And then you can predict that people automatically want to line up for hours and hours just to enjoy that experience. Now, what's interesting here is that in the case of a factory, you're paying these people to do relatively mundane tasks of factory life. But in the case of a theme park, they're actually paying you to stand in line for hours and hours, just because they want to enjoy those few minutes of fun. And so the reason why we call this gamification is because I believe the gaming industry is the first to master human-focused design. Because there's no real purpose to playing a game, right? You never have to play a game. You have to do a lot of things like pay your taxes, do your training, take your medicine. Even if you don't like to do it, you just have to persevere and go and do it. But again, for a game, you never have to play a game. The moment a game is no longer fun, you leave the game. You play another game, you check your email, go to YouTube. So because games have spent decades or even centuries, depending on how you qualify a game, mastering how to get people to come back for 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, doing oftentimes very repetitive activities like throwing out a bird, throwing out a bird, throwing out a bird, or matching 3 gems, matching 3 gems, matching 3 gems. We're now learning from that discipline, and this is why we call it gamification. Now, because gamification has been a field that's blowing bigger and bigger again, when I started in 2003, it was completely crazy. And then 2012, it became something of a small industry and then became bigger and bigger. There's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of confusing language thrown around. Some people say, oh, well, gamification is only giving people points and badges. And then there's serious games, which is a game that's about training purposes, like serious purpose. There's advert games, which is a game you make people do for advertisement. And here in the Octalysis group, we like to see things in simple models. So here we divide everything into a spectrum called implicit versus explicit gamification. And so on the explicit gamification side, it looks like a game, feels like a game, it's gameful and magical, it looks fun, but it's, again, there to create a business purpose. So there's an interesting car model on the right. That looks like a car racing game, right? It's futuristic, you can customize your cars. This is, in fact, the loyalty program that Octalysis we designed for Volkswagen, and it was piloted in Austria for Porsche. So to actually, quote unquote, play this game, you actually need to own one of the cars, in this case, a Porsche to begin with. And then based on how you drive the car, how you interact with other drivers, you can gain rewards and build credibility, and I'll actually help you move into the other cars in the Volkswagen family, which we're going to go into more details later on. The app on the most right, that looks even more like a game. You know, there's a futuristic city, there's an NPC character that's talking to you, there's dialogue, but this is actually a CRM system we designed for one of the largest restaurant technology companies in Europe. And this is for the salespeople to go door to door, knock on restaurants' doors and say, hey, can you buy our technology and use it for your restaurant? So some people might say, oh, well, this looks cool, but you know, we don't want our employees playing these games. But the key thing to remember here is that in order to play this game, you have to do your work. If you're not knocking on doors, if you're not closing sales, you can't even begin playing this game. So if you're spending a lot of time on this game, you're doing very well in the game, that means you're also doing amazingly in the real world, like closing deals for your company. Now, on the left side, we call it implicit gamification design. So this is like a doorknob. The best designs are invisible. You don't really think about the doorknob or pay attention to it. You just use it to open the door. It's clean and efficient. It's like if you go on LinkedIn and you see a progress bar, you don't think that, oh, well, they're trying to make me play a game. I don't want to play a game, right? And so, for instance, on the most left, that's a seller strategy dashboard for eBay that we helped eBay design. And then you have things in the spectrum. It's not, binary. So you have this other app that's about voting for donating to politicians. In the middle, some of you might recognize Waze, which is a navigation app. It's kind of gameful. There's all these characters. You level up your character. There's swords and all those things with your avatar. But obviously, it's also a navigation app. So it's kind of sits in between. It's not a game, but it's also not a traditional navigation app. We didn't design this one, but we have heard that the early designer of Waze is also a fan of our Octalysis framework. So maybe there is some influence there. All right, so let's lead into the main thing, which is the Octalysis framework, what we're most known for in the industry. And of course, we are named by it too. It's called the Octalysis because it's a combination between the word octagon and analysis. And this is a result of many years of research about why games are actually motivating. And it looks at why some games, they look like copycats, they're clones, but some games are successful, some games are not. It's not because some games have these game mechanics like leveling up or Easter egg and the other game doesn't, right? It's because they're copycats. It's not because some games are visually stunning and the and some are ugly, because sometimes the visually stunning game is a failure and the ugly game like Minecraft or RuneScape becomes a huge success. At the end of the day, we realize that all the successful games in the world have what we call the 8 core drives of human motivation. So I published this framework in 2012 on my blog, yukaichat.com, and it picked up very quickly. It was translated, I think, organically into 16 different languages within a year. And that's where we started getting a lot of invitation to speak about this, teach about this, consult, and design. And you can see that inside, there's the 8 core drives that motivate all our behavior. And then outside, there's a variety of different game design techniques that can be used to create that motivation, to create that engagement. But at the beginning, this is pretty busy. Usually what we do at the beginning is just pay attention to the center. What's interesting about these 8 core drives is everything you do in life is based on one or more of these 8 core drives, which means that if there's none of these 8 core drives there, there's zero motivation, no behavior happens. If there's no core drives in the experience, you wouldn't be listening to this webinar. I wouldn't be here. Your customers are not buying, your employees are not working. Nothing happens if there are none of these 8 core drives there. So we're going to explore what these 8 core drives are briefly, and we're going to actually showcase an example or case study that uses core drive. Of course, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to move relatively quickly on those, but lots of them have more case studies in my book and other places you can dig deeper into. And when I created the Octalysis framework, I didn't have any ambitions in academia. I just wanted to create a tool to solve problems for clients and myself. But this year, when I went to Google Scholar, I searched for my framework Octalysis. I noticed there's almost 2,000 academic journals, PhD theses, all applying to the Octalysis framework to a variety of industries like e-learning during COVID-19, quality management systems, all those things. So I feel very, very blessed in terms of the framework I created, stands strong in the academic community too, as well as making impacts, over 1 billion people in this business world. All right, so core drive 1 is epic meaning and calling. So this is the drive that says, because we feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, we're very motivated. So this is, for instance, why people contribute to Wikipedia. We all know they don't contribute to Wikipedia because they can make money, but they don't even do it to advance their resumes or advance their careers. A lot of people spend 1 to 3 hours every day after work updating, contributing to Wikipedia, making sure all the facts are accurate because they believe they're protecting humanity's knowledge, something bigger than themselves. So this is a theme you see in games too. The game will say, hey, the world's about to end, but somehow you're the only person qualified to save the world. And it feels very engaging, motivating. You want to go do it. And so any kind of engagement campaign that's related to things like sustainability, saving the world, helping minorities, freedom, honor, all those things, sometimes politics and religion, faith, they're all focused on this core drive. Now, one interesting example is Ant Financial and Alipay. So this is a financial payment app in China. And most people think, oh, finance payments, it's very functional, it's not fun, right? Why would people want to gamify that? And so what they do is whenever you use the app to do transactions, whatnot, you accumulate resources. Right now you can see it looks like a game, right? So immediately it's more on the explicit side of gamification. We're going to show a lot of explicit because implicit is more invisible, less flashy to show. But what's unique is that they can also take these resources and plant real trees in the real world. So as of 2021, 326 million trees were planted in China because of this Alipay Ant Forest. And so when people use this app, they're not like, oh, I'm not just sending a transaction because I can do it somewhere else. I'm actually saving the world. I'm being a hero. And this makes people want to come back and use this app more and more often. And they feel great when they use it. So it's not just a tool. It actually makes you a hero. Core Drive 2 is development accomplishment. So this is about leveling up, improving yourself, achieving mastery. So most of the points and badges you see in the gamification will fall into this core drive. Points are just mathematical counters, right? It shows a sense of progression. So even though you're doing the same things over and over and over again, hey, at least you see this number growing bigger and bigger, or this progress bar growing, and you feel like you're getting somewhere. For some people, that's like their work. Hey, every day at my job, I do the same thing again and again and again. Hey, but I see my bank account growing bigger and bigger, so that makes me happy. Badges are what we call achievement symbols. So they symbolize a sense of accomplishment. And achievement symbols can be many different forms. It could be badges, trophies, uniform changes, crowns. It could be black belt, white belt for martial arts. And of course, that lend itself into Six Sigma and manufacture design. But the key thing is that it must symbolize an accomplishment. If you give people a silly badge for everything they do, it's just an icon, right? It has no meaning. And so you have to design and build meaning and achieve a feeling of achievement into that icon. So it actually makes sense. Now, Strava is a very interesting exercise that most people know that health is important, they should exercise more, but our brains don't like to process long-term benefits. We like short-term gratification. So Strava, what they do is they show you how, hey, you're improving yourself, you're running better than the week before, this is your progress. So you feel a sense of growth and more immediate feedback. And so you see that in 2021, there are 95 million active users, and also 2 billion exercise activities been logged. And more importantly, they made $167 million in revenue, which is for some companies here, probably not a huge amount, but what's very strong is it's 70% higher than the year before. So very, very active, strong growth rate, and people are really engaged with it. Core Drive 3 is empowerment of creative feedback. So this is basically like chess. You give users the basic building blocks, and there's an infinite ways for them to utilize their creativity, see different strategies, and then look at feedback and then adjust. And that's very engaging. And so this is the core drive about things like self-expression, meaningful choices, autonomy. And you'll see later on in the deeper stuff that this is on the right top of the octagon, which means it's a white hat intrinsic motivation core drive. And so this is the longest lasting type of motivation. We call this evergreen mechanics. And so every timeless game in the world has this core drive, whether it's chess, whether it's poker or mahjong or whatnot. These games don't have to keep adding new content like new quests, new maps, new heroes. The game is just evergreen because our brains are just constantly entertaining itself. More creativity, more meaningful choices and strategy, and you can constantly study and get better and better at it. And one of the great examples of the style of autonomy using your creativity and self-expression is through the world's first GameFi loyalty program by Volkswagen. So, and this is something that Joris personally led, so I'm going to let him introduce the project a little bit.
Oh yeah, thank you, Kai. Yes, this is a project a few years ago we worked on for a while, and it was one of the key digital initiatives at the time, and piloted, as you guys said, in Vienna with around 2,000 cars. Now the thing that this program is that Volkswagen and Porsche Motors needed to change their business model, just like many other businesses need to. So instead of just selling a car and selling you a maintenance unit, all of a sudden they knew that they were not selling just a car, but actually platforms for where they could sell mobility services to you. And so all of a sudden they had a need to engage with users on a daily basis. Now, how do you do that? Because most loyalty programs are very linear, and most people are not daily engaged in it. And so what we crafted, it was very game-like for a young population, 20 to 40 years old, experience where people got transformed, just sitting in the car daily driving, to an activity where they could collaborate with other people, searching for components, beating challenges together while driving the car, all at the same time avoiding that they would drive more, because that was one of the key drivers that we had. People were not allowed to drive more now. Very successful, even though they could not use the app while driving, they were in the app, and I think there's a slide about it as well, for around 5.5 minutes every day. And so that was a big success for Volkswagen and Porsche. Unfortunately, COVID happened and Volkswagen Group almost collapsed. And so now it's still being paused, but there's a plan to roll it out worldwide, 19 million cars. You guys?
Great, thanks Joris for sharing that. Of course, if there are any questions about some examples we're sharing later on, feel free to put in the chat now or ask later. So Core Drive 4 is ownership and possession. So this is a job that says, because we feel like we own something, we want to improve it, we want to protect it, and we want to get more of it. So this obviously deals with things like virtual goods and virtual currencies, and but it also deals with things like why we like to collect stamps or baseball cards. Nowadays, people like to collect a lot of NFTs and whatnot. There's also things that are more abstract, like if you invest a lot of time into customizing your Facebook profile, your Dropbox folders, or your LinkedIn profile, you feel more attachment, hence ownership over that experience. And so even if a new technology shows up that's supposed to be better, you don't want to switch because that one doesn't understand me. This one does. This one's my system. And one of the examples of co-drive for ownership and possession is the game design technique collection sets. And this actually rolls into one of the most interesting and impressive game case studies in the gamification world. So Caixa Econômica Federal was the second largest public bank in Brazil. And they have 83,000 employees and 4,500 locations. And internally, they have 70+ siloed systems, databases that don't talk to each other. And so they didn't approach us directly, but they approached one of our partner companies and our students. You know, we taught them technology company, we taught them called Funnyfire to kind of create this type of engagement. And their goal was that, hey, can we increase our recurring income? Because, you know, bank income is usually more predictable, recurring income by 5%. And they only had 3 months to launch. Now, this came straight from the CEO. So the CEO really helped open a lot of doors. But this seemed almost impossible. I get 83,000 employees and 4,500 locations to be gamified and unify 70+ silo system launch in 5 months and increase 5% when you're such a large established company. So among a lot of many things that Funnyfire using the Octalysis framework did, one of the core things is the collection set design. So first off, they broke down all the activities into KPIs. And when the employees do KPI activities, they will get one of these random cards. And these cards will be like 1/4 of a coffee machine or 1/2 of a TV. And if you get all these cards, you will get the reward. And so, and then later on, they launched different things like there's a market for people to trade cards and all those things. Now, again, some people might see this like, wait, isn't that very distracting? They're not working, they're trading their cards. But what they actually saw is that within 3, so they launched in 3 months successfully. And then after 3 months after that, they actually they hit their goals of increasing the recurring income by 5%. So they went because people were so excited about it. And they said, wow, the more reward we give out, the more money we're making. So let's give out cars now. So they eventually started giving out cars. And so when they went to the CEO and said, hey, we hit the goal, you know, in 3 months. So what do we do now? Do we stop? And the CEO, very reasonable, says, yeah, maybe you guys should keep going. So eventually, after 9 months, the 9-month mark, they actually increased recurring income by $800 million. And that's a 46% lift in their recurring income. And so because of this campaign, Caixa rose from the #2 public bank to the #1 public bank in Brazil because of this Octalysis design that was implemented. And I remember my student was telling me that he had previous classmates who were working at the biggest bank, before the biggest bank, and they suddenly saw the ranking change, and they called him and said, oh, what's going on? Why did this crazy thing happen? He said, oh, because we're doing this gamification design. So, you know, again, one of the most impressive gamification case studies, not just because of the high impact in numbers, 46% revenue lift, we've seen that many times too, but how they were able to break through all these silos and implement so quickly in a large organization, we thought was very, very impressive. Now, Core Drive 5, social influence and relatedness. So this is everything you do based on what other people do, think, or say. So this deals with things like collaboration, competition, deals with things like gifting, and also deals with things like relatedness, like people building rapport, or you see a product that reminds you of your childhood, you want to buy it, or you meet someone from the same hometown, and you automatically would have a higher chance of striking a deal with that person. And so this goes in another case study that we have called Novel Orbital. So this is a project by Procter & Gamble in East Europe, and they are trying to motivate their door-to-door sales staff. So they go to a lot of wholesalers and retailers and say, hey, have you used up all the products that you've been selling from Procter & Gamble? Would you like to resupply them? And so obviously this is a very difficult and grinding job, right? Not very exciting, fun, keep driving. And you know, local sales is oftentimes facing many rejections, or some people are very busy, they don't want to talk to you. So we create a experience design that, again, this whole case study could take a whole hour, but we're just talking about the social influence aspect, where they have an app where they're building a town together as a sales team. And if you do KPI activities, it improves the HP and health of the city. And if you close deals, you actually generate more wealth for the city. So it feels like before, all the salespeople in the team, either you see them as competitors, so you don't want them to be successful, or at least you don't see them as allies, right? You just ignore them. But when we create a design where it's, hey, we work together as a joint project to make the city great, and people have their social profile, you can see there's very interesting style avatars, they can interact with each other, they can help each other. People started to really get engaged with it. Of course, the most important thing after having all this fun is, does it generate business results? And what we saw from that case study is that sales and trading KPI activities actually went up by 59%. And their sales revenue actually went up by 28.5%. Social interactions. So the client said that it was very difficult to measure precisely, but they did see a lot more interactions in the forum and discussion and helping each other. So, and they approximately said it was at least a 300% boost. What's interesting also was, we didn't have this here, but there was a 99.7 rate of adoption in the company. And this sometimes happens with these programs. When we launch a gamified program, there's some people who are like, yeah, this is awesome. They jump into it. And then there's people who's like, oh, this seems really strange. I don't want to touch it. I just want to do my job. But then week after week, you see that people who are engaged with it so exciting, talking about it and sharing it, that eventually creates FOMO, fear of missing out, from the others. Like, wow, they seem to be having so much fun. And they started signing up too. So eventually, the only person who didn't sign up to this and started using this program was a woman on pregnant leave. There was even a person who had to take a sick day off and asked his manager if he could still log in, if he's allowed to log into his gamified dashboard to see if his sales activities are converting into the city growth. And so because of this, case studies for us are a lot of times hard to come up with numbers because clients want to keep it confidential. But in order to go into this 2007 Best Gamification Project Award, our clients did allow us to share these numbers. And of course, we won Best Gamification Project Award in 2017. So happy ending for everyone. Core drive 6 is scarcity and impatience. So this is a drive that says we want something simply because we can't have it, or it's very difficult to obtain. So this goes into things like exclusivity. It goes with things like, oh, you're only allowed to invite 3 friends. So people start going around and inviting. If you say, hey, you're allowed, please invite 1,000 friends, they don't care. But if you say you're only allowed to invite 3 friends, you have 3 exclusive invites, people start doing it. And this is another client project we did called BitDegree. BitDegree is an online education platform, and they want you to learn about a variety of things like programming and blockchain services, all those things. And we help them design a gamified journey where you're kind of, as you're taking classes, learning, you're expanding to new districts and regions in a cyberpunk theme. There's chests you can open, you can have a daily streak. And you can see the scarcity here is that constant feel of, oh, there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more you can have. We don't just show you the district that you can go. We show you the district that you're not allowed to go yet. But if you keep playing the game, if you keep doing desired actions and learning, then you can go to the new district. We show the daily streak, right? There are ones that are locked. Like, oh, there's a lock. You can't do this. The daily chest will say, hey, you won't be able to open it until you meet these criteria. So there's a lot of that feeling of, oh, like I just need to jump through this next hurdle and I'm able to do this. And what's nice about this project is that they actually did an A/B testing for us, or for themselves, really. They had half their user base go through the traditional online education route interface, and half of the users went through the gamified design route. And what they see was that course completion rate increased by 350%. So for the control group, the normal course completion was about 10%. But with the gamified path, it actually went up to 45%. And this is not even like the full implementation of our designs, because they had to start with the MVP and slowly improve after that. And so they're very happy about that. They saw time on platform increase by 300%. So we didn't have the, we can't share the exact numbers, but instead of saying people are there for 10 minutes, now they might be there for 40 minutes to learn. And also course completion time decreased by 50%. So not only 3 to 4 times more people are finishing courses. They're finishing in half the time. If it took an average of 2 months to finish a course, now it's 1 month. So again, very, very strong for this online learning behavior. Now we have Core Drive 7, unpredictability and curiosity. So this is basically saying, because we don't know what's going to happen next, we're always thinking about it. And so this deals with things, it's like things in the gambling industry and sweepstakes, lottery designs, raffle ticket systems. It's also the drive that makes us want to finish a book or a movie, which is why we don't like spoilers. We don't want people to tell us how it should end before we're ready. And one of the designs we made using Core Drive 7 is for La Quinta Hotels. And again, this is through La Quinta Hotels contacted a partner of ours called Lucky DM. And we were brought in the project and did consulting through Lucky DM. Basically, they created a system where people can use their mobile app or computer and play a spinning wheel game to earn potential rewards. And there's all these things you can do to enhance the reward. And it was very exciting for people, even before they want to book a hotel, right? And what they saw is that 34% of users returned daily, which they thought was crazy for a hotel app. And each person spent almost 4 minutes every day on it. Bookings per user actually increased by 200%. And for each booking, they actually saw $157 increase in revenue lift, so 132% against the control group. And what they saw is because people felt it's a lot of fun, and there were benefits. If you invited friends to play too, you get extra benefits for spinning the wheel. And so they saw that on average, during the extension of them doing the testing, they saw each person actually invited a bit more than 5 friends to the platform. So again, very, very strong. Core Drive 8 is loss and avoidance. So it's basically saying you're doing something because you don't want something bad to happen. You're avoiding a loss, or this is the fear core drive. And it's very, very straightforward. We're all very familiar with this. And this is an app that we didn't do. So just an interesting example to wrap up the 8 core drive is called Forest. Forest is a productivity app. So you set a timer and you said, okay, for 25 minutes, I will focus on doing my work. I'm not going to do anything else. And then once the timer ends, it will plant a tree into your little virtual forest. But there is a catch. If during this 25 minutes, you play with your phone, then what it'll do is what happens, your tree will actually die. And so you will fail the mission. And it won't just tell you, oh, you failed, too bad. They'll actually plant your dead tree into your forest. So for a whole year, you have to stare at your failure. So it really helps you be motivated to stay focused just because you don't want your trees to die. And so the data in March 2020, they have 25 million downloads and actually 2 million paying users. And I think that's a huge ratio from downloads to paying, because you might know, usually on day one, after you download, 50% of users often just drop out already, let alone almost 10% of downloads are actually paying. So it's quite an impressive speed here. So again, this is the Octalysis framework. And again, everything we do is based on these 8 core drives. I want to wrap up in a minute or two. But I just want to quickly talk about how it's not just thrown on Octagon for no reason. There's a variety of behavioral science rooted in where it's placed on it. So there's what we call left brain versus right brain core drives. So left brain, not necessarily connected geographically on the left versus right brain, but the left brain core drives deal with our logical brain, and that connects to extrinsic motivation. So these are things that we do it because of a reward, a milestone, or a goal, but we don't necessarily enjoy the activity itself. So once we hit our goals, we get our reward, we get used to the reward, we stop doing the behavior. And then so it's good for attracting new users to come into the experience, but it's hard to keep maintaining it because people keep growing an appetite for rewards. The right brain core drives is the emotional brain and deals with intrinsic motivation, things you just enjoy doing to the point that you're even willing to pay money just to experience. And even if tomorrow all our progress be lost, we still want to do this activity today because it's just basically how we measure quality of lives. How much time we spend on doing things we enjoy doing. So for instance, Core Drive 7, unpredictable curiosity. Example I give a lot is if you sit there and you press a button for 4 hours straight and you're guaranteed a paycheck, that's kind of boring, right? That's like a job at a factory. Most people don't like that. But if you sit there and you press a button for 4 hours straight, and maybe you'll get a paycheck, maybe you won't, maybe you'll even lose money. Suddenly that's casino gambling. And a lot of people like that. And it makes no sense, right? Same behavior, one, you're guaranteed to pay out, and one, you're most likely going to lose money because that's how the casino makes so much money. But our brains prefer the latter because we're literally paying for the entertainment, the intrinsic motivation, the thrill of saying, maybe I'll win. So the right brain is experience focused, and it's good for getting people to stay in the ecosystem and constantly creating value. So again, left brain, results oriented, right brain, experience oriented. Then there's also top versus bottom. Top, we call the white hat motivation core drives. So white hat motivation is about if you're doing things because you're changing the world, you're achieving mastery, using your creativity, it creates a sense of well-being, higher purpose, meaning, happiness. Black hat motivation is more like if you feel like you're always doing something because you are avoiding loss, you don't want something bad to happen, you can't have something or you don't know what's going to happen next, it's still extremely powerful in making you want to do the behavior. But because you feel out of control, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth in the long run. You feel like you can't control your own behavior. So white hat is good for things like loyalty programs, long-term community management, creative employee workspaces. Black hat motivation is good for one-time transactions. You just want people to give you the credit cards, donate money, buy something, you know, like, oh, you have to do it in 10 seconds or the tickets runs out. Or short bursts of activity, like having a one-week competition can be very thrilling in your company, but having a year-long competition, most people don't like to be in constant state of competing with their colleagues and coworkers, and it creates a cutthroat environment and they burn out. So there's a lot of companies that really focus on data-driven design. And the problem is because when you pay too much attention to the data, oftentimes you can go more and more black hat, right? Because it gives you urgency and it shows you immediate results. So sometimes you do more and more and more black hat, which means your short-term data is amazing, like Zynga games, like Farmville, short-term monetization, virality, all amazing. But in the long run, because people don't feel great when they play the game, when they can burn out, they burn out. Of course, just because it's called black hat motivation doesn't mean it's negative. Some people voluntarily put themselves in black hat motivation to eat more healthily, go to the gym more often. This is a funny example where whenever you press the snooze button, the wake me up 10 minutes later button, it destroys your money. So you're waking up because of core drive 8 loss and avoidance, right? You don't want to lose money, so you wake up. But you feel okay about it because it's a goal you want to accomplish. You want to wake up. What people don't like is when employers, marketers, governments, educators, parents use a lot of black hat motivation to get them to buy things they don't need, to work overtime without proper compensation, to get manipulated. And a lot of people still do the behavior because this stuff is obsessive. But the moment they can't drop out, they will want to. So customers buy from competitors, employees leave the company. Sometimes children run away from home when the parenting strategy is too black hat. But if it's a goal they actually want to accomplish, they actually feel very great about it, which is why they often thank their gym trainers to call them losers. You know, when you're doing push-ups and they're calling you very weak, it feels terrible. But afterwards, you thank them for pushing harder than you can ever push yourself. So anyway, that's the Octalysis framework. And yeah, would love to see if you have any questions that you would like us to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yukai, for that great introduction. Yeah, for all the people, Team Snooze. Yeah.